and I should be live. So I'm going to assume that I am. Hi there, good people of the interwebs. Well, in this case, it's only John and Michael, but still, hi there, guys. And today I wanted to do a little ranty thing about the stupidity I see on social media. Now, obviously, in the past we've mentioned Twitter quite a few times. I don't know much about TikTok, I think. So yeah, not going to do that one either. I am, however, going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because lately I have been active on LinkedIn. What with me not having a job, it's always a good thing to be on LinkedIn, apparently, because it's good for finding jobs. Don't know, but still. But on LinkedIn, you see the same kind of tripe go by as you see on Twitter. Don't only blame me, Motwin. Yeah, he is a refresh confirmed. Confirm what? Oh, what? You guys didn't know I would be on time? Oh, come on. By now you should realize I am great. TikTok goes the clock. Okay, right. Anyway, so I was planning on talking a little bit about the funny thing that's happening on the social media, even on LinkedIn. And I didn't expected it on LinkedIn because, as I said, it's basically a site where people meet up to find new jobs. But since I've been on it, I've been pelted with COVID bullshit. And it's interesting because the government keeps posting COVID information, but users have been, well, not banned, but silenced for periods of time because they responded to what the government posted. And the reason LinkedIn gave for temporarily shutting them down was because, well, they're talking about COVID, and we don't want them to talk about COVID, because no one should talk about COVID, because this is not that sort of platform. Yeah, but if that's the case, then why are you pelting us with commercials from the government about COVID? So, once again, don't look for logic and consistency when it comes to social media platforms. I don't own Java. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a very interesting topic that came, well, I thought it was an interesting topic that came across on LinkedIn. Now, this is all about a guy who used to live in Suriname. Suriname was a Dutch colony in 1980. I want to say 1980. It got its states of free country. It's their own country. It's no longer a colony. But there were slaves there because... Then again, most colonies had slaves before the 19th century. No, not before. Halfway the 19th century, 3/4 into the 19th century. After that, no more slaves. So yeah, in Suriname, there were slaves too. And this is the funny thing. So the story is that there's a Suriname Dutch person, because in all fairness, he came to the Netherlands when Suriname became independent. And if you lived in Suriname before that time, you're Dutch. I'm not going to argue that, he's Dutch. So he came from Suriname to the Netherlands in the 19-somethings, probably 70. And he's talking about how he has a problem. And his problem is that his last name is Dijks. Could be true, could be made up, never mind. But he doesn't want that name, because that name reminds him of the slavery history of his family, and to him that's very painful. So he wants to change that name. But to change that name, he has to pay €835, apparently. I didn't know this, by the way. But he wants to change his surname, and that's too expensive, so he really, really has a problem. He feels like he is branded. And it's costing him hundreds of euros to get away from it. Okay, now the first thing any well-thinking person would think is, okay, stop being a victim. But here's the funny thing. The story I just the story I just told you is not from the person himself. The story I posted you was posted by a senior uh, member of blah blah blah, not that important, and council member of the city of Rotterdam. So basically, he's in government. He's in government in a way that he can arrange things or tell other people to arrange things. And he's talking about that the story, when he heard the story, oh, that's terrible. And therefore, we're going to tell the whole fraction to do stuff. And I'm like, you are the government. You can do, you don't even have to ask questions. So, what is the reason it's costing €800? And in all fairness, if you're a government entity and the government doesn't feel like they're supposed to pay it, you can pay it from your political party. It's a good PR stunt, right? But no. The Netherlands has to change because of its slavery history. Okay. And obviously I also had my 2 cents in it, which basically was, I feel sorry for the guy, but in all fairness, even if you are on the dole, you can afford to change your name. It's very, very expensive, but it's not impossible. And change to what? I mean, let's be honest. If he got a name of a Dutch slave owner, which is partly possible, but I'll come to that in a second, then still, those slave owners gave his family a chance to live. Because, let's be honest, in Africa they are still selling slaves. And okay, when the Europeans got interested in the slave trade, they bought slaves. And the transatlantic slave trade was bad, don't get me wrong. But the other major slave trade, and it was far bigger, was the Arab slave trade. And roughly 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people died in the transatlantic slave trade from Europe or Africa to the new Americas. But 1 in 8 died in the Arab slave trade. I mean, they got castrated. Not everyone survived the castration. They had to walk through deserts to reach, if I'm not mistaken, they had to go to, what's the place where they have that stone they pray to? Mecca. They had to go to Mecca. And to reach there, well, that wasn't easy. So a lot of slaves actually died. And because all the males got castrated, there aren't a lot of families. There aren't any stragglers, any family behind. But obviously we have to talk about how bad the Netherlands were. Well, here's the thing though. If the dude indeed was the slave of the family Dijk, because his name was Dijks, then his name wouldn't have been Dijks. His name would have been Van Dijks. Van meaning of. And the funny thing is, most black Africans gained their freedom before the Netherlands abolished slavery. Because in Suriname they were already ahead of the curve in this. Not all, but most. And often, freed slaves took the name of their previous slave owner, and this is the sick part, in thanks. Because even though it was terrible to go to Africa, to the Atlantic slave trade, it was a lot better than the options they had left in Africa. So basically, they often took the names of their previous owners. Well, not the names, because they added of, van. This guy doesn't have Van Dijks in his name, it's just Dijks. And still, we need to feel sorry for this person. We need to change the law in the Netherlands. Slaves or past slaves should be able to change their name freely because something happened nearly 200 years ago. Okay, fair enough. So my question was, if this is true, then should we not also do the same for incest victims? Because let's be honest, if you're a victim of incest, you are going to go the rest of your life with the same name as the perpetrator has. And I'm not talking about whether you're a boy or a girl, whether the perpetrator was your father or your mother or your brother or your sister, any of that, that's not interesting. You're going to have the same name as the person who did it to you. So can you then change your name freely? No, you still have to pay too. So if this is true for someone, no, I didn't mean rape, I mean incest. Incest is rape too often, let's be honest. It's a different name though, because it's different way, gradient, I don't know. It has its own marker. Anyway, back to the story at hand. These victims also have to go through their life being confronted with reality of the name. But the difference is that they have to go through life being confronted with the reality of the name based on something they actually went through. No, I meant the victim of it. So, I mean the victim of incest. Anyway, back to my story. The victim of incest has to go through his life or her life about going to go through its life with that name, being confronted with it. Where this person talks about how he needs to change his name because he has a problem, because his family was a slave. And not his parents, probably his grandparents. No, not probably. His grandparents are a possibility, but not a big possibility. I mean, let's be honest, if he's 50 now and it makes him old, then his parents would be roughly 20 years older, 70, 90 years ago there wasn't slavery in Suriname. So it has to go back further in time. But he didn't go through it. So an incest victim has to pay for it, him or herself, even though they are personally affected. And this person is personally affected because of the stories people tell him. The question that it should have been made free for these people came from a government official. The first person to respond to me and tell me how I was wrong, again, was a government official. So my question to that person too then was, okay, well, you're part of government. What are you going to do to change it? And the first reaction I got back from him was, no, don't make it about me and don't make it about my work. But it is your work. It's not about you, fair enough, but it is about your work. No, but slavery was terrible. And slavery was so bad because we recognize now that it's bad, therefore it must have been bad back then. And therefore we now need to do something because of what happened back then. And I'm like, but didn't they back then already stop slavery? So people back then, probably a little bit later, recognized it, and they did change things. So when is changing enough? And John, it is rape, but in this case they don't call it rape, they call it incest, which is a gradient higher than rape. The actions are the same, fair enough, but the legal ramification is different. I don't know why they gave it different names, but they did. Probably because of the legal ramifications. It's kind of like slaughter in trust. It's something people don't use anymore, but still, it used to be a thing. And you should be able to trust your family. Anyway, back to my rambly story. This man wants to change his name, but he can't because he can't be asked to get the money together. Yes, I did say he can't be arsed. I didn't say he can't afford it, because in all fairness, there's always a way. And the thing is that his grandparents didn't feel like that, and his parents didn't feel like that, but he does. And then I have basically two government officials talking about how this is indeed terrible and we need to change something. But they're the ones in a position to actually change something. So why do I need to change something if they won't be asked to do so? Just trust your family when talking about incest. Well, yeah, that's strange. Anyway, obviously, as funny as it is, the conversation then started talking about how slavery was a bad thing, which obviously it is, and we should condemn the Dutch government and whatever we did back then and since then, but we shouldn't condemn countries where slavery today is still happening, because yeah, it's bad, but we know it's bad. Therefore, that we did it is worse, even though back then everyone did it and most people didn't think it was bad. Now that's something we can't wrap our head around, because to us, of course it's bad. But back in the day, there were actually people who saw the positive thing of slavery. And it took me some time to learn this, but there is a positive thing about slavery. And it's sickening, but this is the thing. You'd either be a slave or you'd be dead. Because two groups would fight, two tribes would fight, two countries would fight, and the loser would be enslaved. But before the loser would be enslaved, not literally before, but decades before that happened, if two tribes would fight, the loser would be slaughtered. So there is a step forward in slavery. It's sickening to see it like that, but it is factually true. The fact that they were slaves meant that they survived after losing a war or a battle or blah 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 blah. There is a lot of things wrong with it, but we have to be nice to these people, because their family or their family's family, or how far back in time you have to go, were probably slaves. And the worst part is we don't know that, because even in Suriname, not all slave owners were white. Not all free men were white. So yeah, that's the constant indignity of reality. How dare reality not conform to simple storylines? And then in this whole storyline, there was this woman who felt the need that she had to weigh in, because obviously slavery is bad. So how dare you not want to change? How dare you not want to have that man change his name for free? And I'm like, I don't care if he got his name changed for free, but then, as equality demands, everyone should be able to get at least one name change for free. Because isn't that what equality is? It's the same for you as it is for me. Yeah, but your family didn't go through slavery. We don't know that, do we? Because slavery did happen in Europe. Obviously, not as much as it happens in Africa, but it did happen. The Ottoman Empire, even till I think late 19th century, so 1870, the Ottoman Empire still went on raiding, slave raiding in the Middle East, not in the Middle East, not in Muslim countries, in Christian areas around the Mediterranean, in Africa, and all the way up the European coast, up until Ireland. Now we know that this happened, but as soon as you bring this up, you're merely deflecting. Because how dare you bring this up? Because what happened to this one man is far worse than what's still happening around the world today by other men. But those other men aren't white men. And this is another funny thing. And it's seeped with critical theory. It's seeped in postmodernism, because now we know that what we did then was bad, therefore now we should still be sorry. But at the same time, other cultures, other countries still doing it today, well, that's just as bad. It's not worse because they're still doing it, even though we know for years now that this is a bad thing. No, it's just as bad that we did it then, and therefore they are no better or worse than we were, and we're the worst. But they're not, because... And even if you look at this in a simple way, then you would say, well, that means that these people are 100 years, 200 years behind the curve. In fact, then you are saying that these people are behind us. Now, I think everyone should be equal. But people like this, they don't believe everyone should be equal. No, everyone should be equal, but we need to be subservient. Because if we're not subservient, we're supremacist. You know, isn't subservient against equality? I'm not talking about S&M relationships. Hey, I mean, a sub in an SM relationship is rather powerful. No, I'm talking about how Western societies are to blame, but you're not to point at countries where it's still happening, because that's merely to deflect your blame, even though you're correct that it's still happening there, but they don't know any better. But you do, and your grandparents did too, and that's why they changed it, basically paying with money and blood to end it. But that doesn't dissolve them of blame. You are still to blame, and they are still to blame, even though they fought to change it. But countries where they still do it, yeah, they're not to blame. I mean, come on, they're not white. It's sickening, but this is actually the way that they motivate themselves. I mean, in the example of the conversation I had, it's literally said that, okay, yeah, sure, there is still slavery happening in Qatar right now, but that's not as bad as what we did. And it's either as bad as what we did, or it's not bad. Fair enough. If it's as bad, that we stopped it 200 years ago, 150 years ago. They didn't. Doesn't that automatically mean that we are evolved more than they are? And if you're going to say, no, we're not evolved more than they are, then basically what you're saying is slavery isn't that big a deal, because you can be evolved with slavery. Well, except if you're white, because if you're white, you can't, because slavery is a bad thing. But it's okay if you're not white, because then slavery is merely a cultural thing. It's always fun to try to understand these people. And obviously they don't feel anything they say is wrong, because, well, don't you agree slavery is bad? Yeah, of course I agree slavery is bad. Well, therefore you see, if you agree with me that slavery is bad, and you just did, that means that you agree that your grandparents or your great-grandparents were bad. But we're not to mention other cultures, because they can't help themselves. I know, it's rambly. I told you it would be rambly. Sorry about that. Now, that's one of the funny stories. And of course, slavery is a cultural thing, because that was why it has been accepted in nearly every culture for all of time. And yeah, John, you're correct. It was a cultural thing. And people at that time, most people at that time, did not think slavery was a bad thing. It was an acceptable thing. Funny enough, the UK, or rather England, already had made many a step towards stopping slavery thousands of years, no, not thousands, hundreds of years before that. But even in Europe, slavery was still a common thing till, I'm going to say, till the starting of America. And to me, that is a funny story, because it shows how incredible blind people are. They can literally tell you that black is white. Now, I know Yuri Bezmenov said this too, but it's still interesting to see how people do this. People, mind you, that work for government in reasonably high positions. It's scary too, I have to admit, it is. Ooh, Corona. I got another one funny for Corona in a sec as well. Let me clear my throat with a bit of drink. Oh boy. Now, I only have the article I want to do next in Dutch because I haven't been able to find the English version, but it doesn't get much better than this. Tip it up. Changer. Changer. There we go. Bye bye. Baby rabbit eating a banana. Hello there, stupid article. Now this is from the New Scientist, and as John pointed out pre-stream when we were talking, new basically means that these guys are as left as, I don't know, something really left. Leftists tend to call everything new. And I mean, the New Scientist is an English website, but this is the Dutch publication. I haven't found the English one. It is out there. I know it is out there. Just haven't found it. And I can't translate it in the site. Usually you can, but can't find it. However, I can translate it for you. Oh, well, there you go. John gave me the English version. Okay, let's put the English version on. Boop. Is this the same? Let me see. It's a lot shorter, actually. Go away, you. And go away, you. All right. Continue reading. Subscribed for unlimited access. Okay, so I have to subscribe to read this one. And that's not going to happen. I'm sorry, John. Thank you for finding the English one. But I'm going to go back to the Dutch one. Okay, so first off, in big white letters, can Corona merge with another virus to a Frankenstein virus? So this is the question. Are you afraid yet? You should, because it's gonna get worse. Okay, it's not, but they'll try to make it sound like that. And they merge the bats and the lab conspiracy theory together. On this one, no, not really. And yes, the Dutch are freer than the English, but not by a lot. Our government is so incredibly communistic at the moment, it is scary. They literally are telling people to rat out their neighbours. But then again, they did the same in England. I mean, I've seen Priti Patel say stuff like that as well. Anyway, back to the story at hand. Now, the new coronavirus would probably evolve from at least two other viruses in an infected animal or human. And it is possible that the virus in a human will mutate in a scary thing. Now, some virologists are worried about the possibility that there will be a Frankenstein virus based on SARS-CoV-2. This would happen if it would merge with two other coronaviruses. I'm not quite sure why it has to be two. I think it could merge with one. It could merge with non-coronaviruses, perhaps. I don't know. It's not as if I'm a virologist. Now, the precise details are uncertain, but genome research of the virus points towards a mashup, which happened about 10 years ago in bats. The bat was infected with two hybrid viruses based on corona. And if you split the family tree of this coronavirus, then such recombination of viruses happens a lot, apparently. Okay, viruses merge together and mutate. This is not new. The melting of these viruses happens for two reasons. First, coronavirus are tolerant for co-infection, which is true because just about everyone that died with comorbidities. Now, this has nothing to do with co-infection, in all fairness. Comorbidity means you're already weak and you're about to die, and everything can push you over the edge. Anyway, so the melting pot theory, yeah. And secondly, the way coronaviruses replicate their genome, it's not likely that they will merge, but it's probable. See, it's all these probable and likely and weasel words. The New Scientist recently ran another article showing how little the coronavirus has mutated. Well, in this article they're talking about how terribly mutated it will be, and it will be a Frankenvirus. Because the enzymes are there to copy their RNA, they don't have proofread versions, so it might be a lot worse. Coronaviruses are the exception among RNA viruses because their replication enzymes do proofread. Wait a second, didn't you just say that it wouldn't? Well, no, it would. It's doublespeak. Maybe I didn't understand it. Mind you, possible. Now, the different coronaviruses do find their, how do you call it, creation in something else, recombination. So their replica enzymes often make little jumps from one part of the RNA to the other part, and because of this they can create a new mix of their own genome. It's also called mutation. Combination candidates for the terrible possibilities are being checked by Yuguang Yi. Yes, I butchered the name, so sue me. Of the University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen, China. And he implicates that SARS-2, its genome in human cells, is recombining. Now, Yi has looked at 84 SARS genome sequences of human patients, and in those things he found a few recombinations that only could have existed because of the fact that they were in a human. So again, it's mutating. See, that's the thing with viruses and bacteria. They keep mutating. That's why there are several strains of flu, for example. Anyway, now there are 4 of these season-bound coronaviruses in circulation. Next to that, the original SARS virus, that of 2002 and 2004, is still out there. Even though it's not as prevalent as people feared, it might make a comeback. And then there is the MERS coronavirus, which is also barely there. But hey, that one could come back too. It's a lot of, nothing is going on right now, but it could. And we're not saying that it will, but it could. And it's not very likely that it will, but it could. Are you scared yet? So the fear becomes real when a human is simultaneously infected with SARS-CoV-2 as one of the other coronaviruses. So you would have SARS-CoV-2 and SARS-CoV-1, or the rhinovirus, or MERS, because then it could be really angry. Mind you, it could. This might even lead to a second pandemic. Okay, it might. It might not, but it might. Now, is this improbable? Where, being careful is a good thing, but in medical circles, people are talking about how the simultaneous infection of one person by 2 or more viruses is not that large. It's not to say that it's improbable, but yeah. So we are worried about the flu, but we also have to have more attention to season-bound coronaviruses. Those fly under our current radar. It's kind of funny because you know how many people died of the flu in the last year. It's less than 1,000 in the Netherlands, which is unique because the Netherlands never had a flu season with less than 1,000 flu deaths. But we have one now. It's not known if SARS-2 can recombine with a normal coronavirus, but we can't exclude it. The effective combining of the genome material of 2 viruses is harder if the viruses are very different, according to Raul Ramadan of the Columbia University in New York. Now, if simultaneous infection corona. If a simultaneous infection happens in a person with a normal coronavirus and SARS-CoV-2, it's very unlikely, but not impossible, that there would be potential combinations of survivable coronaviruses. Seriously though, I mean, I'm going to reread this one. If there is a simultaneous infection between in a person with 2 coronaviruses, the normal coronavirus, a normal coronavirus, because there are hundreds of them, and SARS-CoV-2, it is unlikely, but not impossible. So people, be very afraid, because something is, well, it's unlikely to happen, but it's possible. Coronavirus duck soup, yes indeed. But it's almost as if we're looking at what are those names? You had those machines. It's called a machine where you drop a ball and it then bumped into something and that fell over, and because that fell over, it moved something else, and that something else did something, and something else happened, and in the end, tea was ready. Or something silly like that. It has a name. Those machines have a name. There are plenty of videos on those things on YouTube. It's kind of the concept of what most horror movies. Someone walks somewhere, he trips over it. Well, Mousetrap is a game like that, yeah, but they have a name for those contraptions. Someone walks somewhere, he trips over something. Because he trips over something, he pushes against someone. That someone pushes against someone else. That someone stands on the wrong place, and therefore something goes up and someone dies. And none of it would have happened if the first person wouldn't have skipped. It's improbable, most likely never will happen, but it's possible. It's not impossible that it happened, because it could. I mean, this is not even reaching. If reaching would be an Olympic event, these people would be disqualified for being professionals, I guess. You can't be a professional on the Olympic Games, if I'm not mistaken, which also is a lie, because the football teams are professional players. But never mind that. This is a professional level of reaching. That's what I wanted to say. Now, Yi told the New Scientist that he's not really worried about a recombination of SARS-CoV-2 and a season-bound coronavirus, because their genomes aren't related enough. So basically, we've been going through all this article telling us how it could, but it could happen. And then here we have the scientist that we mentioned earlier, who says, yeah, no. Now, combining it with SARS or MARS viruses or unknown viruses, well, that could be another story. Because SARS, as genome, looks a lot like SARS-CoV-2. Yeah, because SARS and SARS-CoV-2 are basically related. Now, that combination is most dangerous. How dangerous is that combination? It's still very unlikely, but that could actually happen. But why are you fearing us with something that is very unlikely to happen? So, this sounds scary, but a hybrid virus wouldn't be per se worse than SARS-CoV-2. And I'm like, how does this sound scary? I'm scaring, yes. They're scaring people, but they're not. The story in itself isn't scary. I mean, I could scare you with the fact that an asteroid might hit your very town tomorrow. Yeah. It might not, but it could. Did you realize that it could? If you go to work tomorrow, you might get hit by a truck. It's unlikely, but you could. This is the level of scaremongering. And okay, it's possible that a mashup could happen, but it's very unlikely. And a recombination of SARS-CoV-2 and whatever it is might still be a big problem. And it's weird. Don't turn your webcam on. No, don't. Okay. I wasn't planning to. Not sure why people are asking for that. Scaring people is the mainstay of modern society. It is the other side of the victim narrative. Well, I guess you're completely correct in that one, John, because it seems to be the great thing that happens. People have to be afraid. And if you're not afraid yet, well, then you haven't understood what I've been telling you. Or you did understand what I've been telling you and you see right through it, but that can't be true because I've scared you, didn't I? Now, the new mashups may lead to genetic variations that could make the virus more virulent, more sick-making. It could, by the way. And it could make it more resistant against medication, or better capable of destroying our immune system. It could do all these things. It, by the way, also could not do these things. And it could make the diagnostics based on RNA useless. I mean, the chances of this happening is slim, and that's overstating it. But doctors and virologists should be worried about these possibilities, according to Mr. Yi. And that's about the article. It's amazing. You have to be afraid. Do you realize that you have to be afraid? Now, why do you have to be afraid? Well, something might happen, and you don't know what it is that might happen. And it could happen today, or tomorrow, or the day after, or not at all. But if you assume that it will not happen at all, you're not afraid. So, yeah, you need to be afraid. Be afraid. Because, and this is the funny thing, because this is the whole corona thing all over again. Remember how we had to be really, really scared of corona, and most people that are now being called death because of corona didn't die because of corona. They died with corona, but not because of corona. And it's not nice to say, I know it's not. But what do you think their goal is in scaring us? Well, for one thing, we can be sure that for the coming months, we're still probably not allowed to go outside. Now, in all fairness, in September, usually flu season starts. So I would be very amazed if we don't see people coming forward with having similar symptoms that have been linked to COVID. Doesn't mean they have COVID, by the way. They have the symptoms, because most of these symptoms are pretty much the same than flu. And this is another funny thing. In the Netherlands, last Corona season, we had less than 1,000 flu deaths. And I've been looking into it. I haven't found any year since we started counting them where flu had less than 1,000 deaths. And it's never been close, don't get me wrong. I mean, the lowest number I could get at was 3,500. But, and yes, the second wave was the rhinovirus. You're right, Michael. And the thing is, now they're testing a lot of people, or at least they're saying they're testing a lot of people. In the Netherlands, for example, testing has gone up from, last week it was 190,000, the week before that was 180,000. But the positive results went up from 100 something to 100, 200 something. The precise numbers I haven't with me right now. But the RNA test has an error margin of, depending on who you ask, 0.2% to 4%. Now, if the error margin is indeed 4%, then everyone that has been tested positive could be the error margin. If the error margin is indeed 0.2%, then part of these people are probably still infected with COVID. But the worst part is they're not infected because the PCR test notices that you have RNA in your nose. The thing is, that RNA can stay in your nose for up to 3 months, I have been told. It doesn't have to be 3 months. It could have been 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but it was dead RNA. And still, you are tested positive. Yeah, but after that test, people should always get a blood test. Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, but people should only get tested if they already have problems. Yeah, but that's not true either, because people need to do the PCR tests, because if they want to go to their family in hospital, they have to prove that they haven't got corona, so they need to do the bloody PCR test, which is absolutely useless because even if it does score you positive, it doesn't mean you have COVID. And it's amazing because they're talking about how crowded the test stations are, but I've seen images of test streets in Eindhoven, Rotterdam, Twente, Enschede. No one is there. No one is coming to get the test done. But we are being told that they are testing so many people. I'm not doubting the fact that they're testing a lot of people. I'm merely saying that, you know what? Maybe calling them a lot of people is not really true, because the test itself doesn't even take 5 minutes. So yeah. Anyway. So I had the corona thing. I had the LinkedIn thing about slavery. Slavery is an interesting topic. I probably should make something more tangible about that one. I was planning once to make a video or a video documentary on the stupidity of reparations. Maybe I should go back to that one. I find it hard to get myself motivated to do things because, in all fairness, YouTube is pissing me off no end. Then again, people are pissing me off no end as well. I mean, how dare you not follow along with mainstream rhetoric? Because if you don't, that must mean that you have to be, well, at least a Nazi. Never mind the fact that, you know, you're correct, but you're correct in something we don't want you to be correct about. How dare you? Oh, damn it, I should have had the clip of, what's that girl's name? Swedish, lying about the climate. Oh, by the way, people, climate change is back in the news as well. Did you know this? Funny as fuck. Because there are forest fires in America, and it's the worst ever. Well, except for last year, or the year before that, or the year before that. Oh yeah, or the year before that. Because forest fires are pretty much a common thing, even if they aren't being lit by Antifa. Well, it's not proven that they were lit by Antifa. Well, that's not true, because already a few people have been caught red-handed. Oh yes, the holy Greta. The Greta Thunberg. Oh, I feel sorry for the child, I really do. She has no life when she gets older. Then again, she has rich parents, so she probably has a better life than me. But since Corona Extinction Rebellion has been pretty quiet, obviously they are active again, because the climate is still real, people. And I have to admit, it has been pretty warm this summer. Unclear why it has been pretty warm. Must have been CO2, which is weird considering the fact that so many planes and so many cars haven't been driving. So I think our CO2 production should be less. And then again, I could be wrong. Maybe the CO2 production went up because people were home more and therefore used more electricity at home. Could be that. I don't know. Something to look into, perhaps. Anyway, so far my rambling Saturday stream. I think Saturday will become my new study time, because the badgers have encroached on my territory, and someone else did too, apparently. Hell, there are lots of people who stream. Even now there are lots of people who stream. And she's now protesting for the right to go to school. I agree with her. Though, if I were the school director, I don't think I want her to come to my school, but I think kids should go to school. It's kind of funny, because kids under the age of 12 are nearly impervious against Corona. Their T cells are so strong that Corona doesn't even become strong enough to be able to infect other people. Not me saying that. I read a study on that not too long ago. Obviously, I don't have it here because I decided to stop talking about the lie that is Corona. Don't get me wrong, the sickness of Corona is very real, but all the things that are being added to it to make sure that you're very afraid. People, please remember that the average age of a person dying from Corona is above the average age of a person dying. In the Netherlands, a man's average maximum age is 47 years, and the Corona victim is, sorry, not 47, 74, and a Corona victim is 78, roughly. So that's 4 years after you probably would have died already. Anyway, I like to thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you next Saturday then, because I don't think I'll do a stream on Wednesday. And but my children can't go to school because they'll die of Corona. They don't. That's the thing. I mean, it's so stupid, because I was talking to a school director, because my son needs to go to school, but at this point in time he's still at home. But he needs to go to school. Yeah, but we have to be careful because Corona. He's 5 years old. I mean, in this household, I had it, my wife had it, the two guests that have been living here had it. You know who didn't have it? So yeah, there's that. Anyway, see you later, Michael. See you later, Paolo. And before I start ranting again, see you later, John. I really should hang up now. So that's what I'm going to do. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all next Saturday. I'll try to be a little bit less rambly. It's not going to be hard, but I gotta try to do that. See you all next time.